we could be alone between city lights. We don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. It's very good to be with you here on a Monday night. With you here to talk about FPV, answer your questions about FPV. And I always like to start with a little bit of chat before we get into the questions. And today, the thing I want to chat about is, if bookmark today's Rotor Riot video. How much G-force does an FPV drone pull? I watched, here's how good this video is. I was in it, and I watched the whole thing again. I don't know, having said that, it was supposed to be like I was in it, and yet I watched it even though I was in it. But actually, now that I think about it, I'm probably more likely to watch a video I was in because I'm just a narcissist and like seeing myself on. Okay, so regardless, this was a fun one. This one, I think me and Sean and Bubby really vibed in this one. We did some interesting experimentation. We smashed the shit out of Sean's drone. Intentionally. Like full throttle dive into the ground 3 times. How hard is it to get it right the first time? Well, go ahead. Just bookmark that one. How much G-force does a drone pull? And check that out after the stream. I think you're going to enjoy it. I certainly did. Thank you. It was Bubby. Bubby, that's not the right scene. There we go. Bubby was the one who I think conceptualized that. Maybe it was Sean who had the idea. I don't know who had the idea, but it was a great episode. It was a lot of fun to shoot, and hopefully you'll have a lot of fun watching it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about your questions about FPV. And I will be taking your questions with the help of with the help of the Robin to my Batman. Bunty, do you think that's a fair? What do you think? I just made that up. What do you think?
I'm sure we can find a different duo. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Not Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you think
maybe the chat can suggest better duos, but Robin sounds a little out of my wheelhouse.
No. Okay. All right. Well, chat. You suggest what dynamic duo me and Blunty would best be. And when we do the news, Blunty, we are two halves of the same screen. But for these live streams, you're like the call screener or producer, giving me all the answers in my ear while I sound smart. No, that makes sense. Blunty's going to be picking questions from the chat, helping, because I'm so busy answering the questions that I miss them. So we got a little setup going on here where he can tag questions for me, and I can do a better job as a streamer. So we are going to be, hang on. We're going to be taking your questions from the YouTube chat. Yeah, Blunty.
There's one, Jay and Silent Bob. I could see that's a pretty good duo.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You definitely could be Silent Bob. I mean,
yeah,
you have the look. You certainly. I'm not sure I would pull off Jay. I definitely don't have the hair for it. That's good though. That's better. That's closer. That's closer. Ponch and John. That's an old one. How about Bert and Ernie?
Holmes and Watson. Bert and Ernie. That's interesting.
Between the two of us, the thing is, Ernie is kind of cheerful and happy, and Bert is grumpy. I think between the two of us, I'm not sure which, because we kind of go back and forth. Who would be Bert and who would be Ernie? We're going to be picking your questions from the YouTube chat, of course. Of course, we're going to be paying attention to the Discord server here on the right side of my screen with all the memes from Black Jungle and others. Memes and GIFs, or GIFs, if you swing that way. Blackadder and Baldric. Anyone who wants to compare me in any respect to Rowan Atkinson, the great Rowan Atkinson, whether you're comparing me to Blackadder or Baldric, who just, is in the same room, I take that as a compliment for sure. If you want to get in the Discord server, by the way to do that is to join the Patreon. People always ask. And of course, if you hit the $ down here, that is the way to ensure that I read your message during the stream. Leaving a super chat is the only way to be 100% sure. But if I don't get to your message during the stream, please don't feel bad. There's always way too many messages to read them all, especially when you ramble as much as I do. And you're always welcome. Anybody is welcome to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, and I will try to help you with your problem. But we're going to start off with some questions here. And I want to start with this comment from Pilot Extreme, who watched that Rotor Riot video where we were trying to measure the G-forces that a quad experiences during flight. And of course, we did some normal freestyle flying, and then we decided to do more extreme things to generate G-forces. And I was like, well, what would generate the most G-forces and also be good for the video is if we just plowed this thing into the ground full speed. And I confess that my main motivation was a desire to full throttle someone else's quad into the ground at full speed. Because nothing is more fun than someone else giving you freedom to crash their quad. And you're like, yes, no consequences, baby. But I also thought it would be good for the video and people would enjoy watching it. And it's the kind of thing that Rotor Riot can do, so you don't have to. And then sort of third on the list was the desire to know how many G-forces the quad experienced. But I didn't really think it through because a gyro sensor can only measure so many Gs. At a certain point, it maxes out and it doesn't go any higher. And it turns out that the G sensors on our flight controllers, they max out. I don't remember the exact number. It was somewhere around 10 or 15 Gs. It wasn't. I don't remember the exact number. It doesn't matter. But it was way less than the number of Gs that quad was experiencing. And it left me wondering, like how we could measure the number of G's. Like, it turns out there are these little stickers. You may have seen them on Mythbusters, used them. There are these little stickers you can put on an object, and if the sticker experiences more than a certain number of G's, then it like changes color or something happens. I don't remember what happens to it. And the problem is that they're super expensive. Like, an individual sticker isn't that expensive, but they only sell them in packs of like 50. And so it's like several hundreds of dollars to get and I was like, all right, I don't know how we would do this. But we were not able to get a good reading, unfortunately. And I desperately wanted to, that video needed to have a readout, but unfortunately we had to end it without that payoff, but it had a lot of payoffs in it, and hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Oh no, I've ruined the video by telling you that we didn't get we did it 3 times, and each time we were unable to get a number because the crash was so violent that the thing measuring the G-forces just gave up. And I will say though, we smashed the tank, the Rotor Riot tank, Sean's frame. We smashed that thing, literally just turn upside down and literally full throttle, bam, into the ground 3 times. The 3rd time on concrete, and only the 3rd time did the frame break at all, which was damn impressive. So, if you decide to recreate this experiment, you're going to need to find a way to measure 50 or 60 G's, I would guess. And I don't know how you're going to do that, but I'd be interested to know more. Interesting. Your Kindamid emailed me with trouble with the Meteor 65. Is there anywhere that I could get it figured out? Oh, I see. So your Kindamid, I hope that I emailed you back. Like, occasionally I get an email with a question that is, I look at it and I go, oh, this is going to take me a minute to think about. And I say, I'm going to set that aside and come back to it later. I almost never will just like ignore a message. So if you didn't get an answer, then hopefully I answered you. But if we weren't able to get it sorted out and you're looking for something more direct, I would say that you can go to itsblunty.com, and Blunty will get on a Zoom call with you and try to get you figured out. That's a service that he offers. It's also a service that I offer, but I charge more than him just because I don't want to. I prefer to do that stuff over email, and like I'll answer 50 or 60 or 70 emails a day. And if I get on a Zoom call and spend 1 hour helping one person, I'm like, but there's 50 other people out there who I'm not helping. And then it just it just makes me really anxious. So I charge more than him because that's how I feel about it. But It's Blunty would be great. And I'll bet he can help you get it figured out. So let's see here. Yeah, the arm didn't even break on the quad. It was the bottom plate that finally cracked and gave up the ghost. But I mean, Jesus, it was ridiculous. The damage that was done to it was just ridiculous. Okay, let's dive into the questions, and we're going to start with this question from Magneto, I assume. Are there any pre-built 3 or 3.5 inch quads similarly priced to the Baby 8 Pro and the Crux 35 that you would recommend? Let's just familiarize ourselves here. The Happy Model Crux 35. That's the digital one. I don't know if we want that one. Let's look at the... Oh, stop. Let's look at the analog one. The analog Crux 35 is $142. No, that's not going to... Oh, there we go. Baby Ape 3-inch is $80. I got to tell you, there's not a lot out there this inexpensive. That's why this quadcopter is so exceptional. 142. I wonder. I think these are the ones. I mean, I usually would then go look at my website and remind myself if there's any other quads that I recommend. Here's the Crux 3. Here's the Tiny Ape. Man, I don't know. Can anybody in the chat suggest, is there other stuff out there at this good of a price? In the 3 or 3.5 inch category? What about the GEP-RC Phantom? They still make that? Ooh, that's the right price. GEP-RC Phantom comes to mind. Still for sale. Still for sale? Sad they don't seem to sell it with ExpressLRS. It's an older one. It's still available. This one's pretty solid. I think, oh God, it has press-on props. See, it's a little older. It's a little older, and some of the design decisions date it just a little bit, but it's in the right price range and isn't terrible. TMMRC, Happy Model Baseline. That's a new one. That's a 2S. That's not a 3-inch, though. That's not a 3-inch. That's a 2-inch. So he asked for a 3-inch to a 3.5 inch. GEP-RC Smart 3.5. That's a good one. Is it in the right price range, though? I think that's going to be a little more expensive.
Hey,
That's
so
the
sorry to
Smart
interrupt.
3.5 HD. Yeah, Blunty.
We lost our link to Discord in the back end. I don't know if you
Did
closed the browser
we?
window. Yeah.
No, but I did scroll back. Interesting. Let's see. Hang on. I bet it's because I scrolled back to an older message and the window isn't updating. Give that a second. I think the Smart 3.5 is going to be more expensive. So let me just screen grab this comment. And then see if I scroll all the way down, Blunty. Does it start updating? Or maybe just reload. I'm going to reload the window. And I reloaded the window. Oh, I'm in the wrong. I see. I went to the wrong channel. That's why. I changed channels. There we go. We're caught up now, Blunty. Yeah, when I click away in that Discord window, it breaks the connection. I didn't think about that. That's interesting. That's a good point. Yeah. That's a really good point. Okay. Emacs Nanohawk. $101. Not a 3-inch though. He really asked for a 3-inch. That's the thing. All right. Happy Model Baseline. Again, not a 3-inch. HDLRC Petrol. That's the right price. It's a 3-inch. Okay. I am always a little hesitant about HDLRC electronics, but this does fit the bill and probably no less trustworthy or less reliable than Darwin FPV. So those are some suggestions. The Meteor 85 is not a 3-inch. Guys, come on. Quick Flash says they have a 3-inch Nanohawk. Do they? Emacs usually makes good stuff. Oh, look at that. Nanohawk X3. Stop. Oh, that looks exciting. All right. Yeah. Okay. I think there's a question that Blunty wasn't able to pin. Is he pinning it? No, he is pinning it. Okay, great. Okay, moving on. Eddie Lancaster has a $5 super chat. Can you briefly explain the legal restrictions when trying to fly on airplanes in the U.S. with FPV drones and equipment? Yeah, Eddie, it's pretty simple. The main thing you need to worry about is your batteries. Your LiPo batteries must be less than 100 watt hours. For perspective, 100 watt hours is a 5S 5,000 milliamp hour battery. That's easy to remember because it's 5 and 5. Let me just do the math for a 6S. It's going to be 3.7 times 6 is 22.2. And then that is the 6 cells, that's the volts, times, let's say, 1,000 milliamp hours is 22.2. 100 divided by 22.2 is 4.5. So it would be a 4,500 milliamp hour 6S. In other words, most of your drone batteries are small enough that you don't need to worry about the 100 watt hour limit. So they need to be less than 100 watt hours, and you cannot check them. Do not check them in your check bag. You must carry them on, which sounds counterintuitive because usually, like dangerous stuff, they don't want you bringing it into the cabin. But if a LiPo lights on fire, they want it to be in the cabin where someone can deal with it. So you bring the batteries through security. Ideally, it's simpler to have the batteries in a separate, like a battery bag. That's not required, but a lot of times they'll want to scan that bag or swab it, and being able to just take the batteries out of your backpack or your whatever bag and slide them through separately makes life easier. Other than that, doesn't matter. If you have a tool bag, I personally check my tools. Technically, in the US, any tool like a screwdriver or a wrench that is under 7 inches is allowed to come into the cabin. But personally, number one, I don't want to take out, like I have a Leatherman with a knife on it that couldn't come in the cabin, I assume. I don't know. I'm not even going to try and risk losing it. So I always just check my tools in my check bag. That's about it. Keep it under 100 watt hours. And check everything else. John Goblin says, one battery can't be that big. You can bring as many batteries as you can carry. That is correct, John. The limit is 100 watt hours per battery. There is no limit on the number of batteries you can carry, which seems kind of dumb, but that's the rule. So. CKFPV, great question. Would you consider using HD0 or Walk Snail if you fly sub 250 only, but already using DJI and analog? HD0 and Walk Snail are hands down better than DJI in the, say, 65 to 85 millimeter class. Okay? There is absolutely no question in my mind that in the 65, 75, maybe even 85 millimeter class, HD0 and Walk Snail are significantly lighter, and that makes a huge difference in quadcopters of that size. When you get to, say, 85 or 95 millimeters, that's where I think a naked DJI Vista is not that much of a detriment, although still a little bit of a detriment. And then anything bigger than about 95 millimeters, anything from about 3-inch, 3.5-inch and up, I think that at that point, the additional weight is not that big of a deal, and you're making your decision more based on which video link you like best. But anything in that smaller class, the decreased weight of HD0 and Walk Snail is so huge. Did the question get cleared? Well, it's back now. If you're already using DJI and analog, you could consider flying analog, right? Makes sense. Just keep flying analog. Don't spend any extra money on like HD0 goggles or an HD0 receiver, because if you, assuming you've got the DJI goggles, then you don't have goggles with an HDMI input, and you will need to buy a whole new set of goggles, and that's kind of a big deal. But if you aren't put off by that, then yeah, you're going to get a better experience. If when you say sub 250, I mean, if you mean like 3 inches sub 250, just keep flying DJI. Yeah. Hey, Blunty, are you clearing this message?
I am not.
Okay. Interesting.
Are you somehow clicking something? I don't know. Normally it only happens when we click.
No, I don't think so.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that.
Okay.
Let's see here. Christopher Trin wants to know, any thoughts on the Immersion RC LZR Mini antenna array? I know you used it in the past. Christopher, I did use that on my analog goggles. My experience was that it was such a narrow beam that in any environment where I wasn't flying directly in front of myself, I say directly in front of myself, let's say a 90 or 100 degree arc, maybe 180 degree arc. But any experience where I'm like sitting in the parking lot in the middle of the office park and fly behind myself, it was significantly less coverage and I ditched it. It's a little bit different when you've got a digital video system with 4 antennas, because you can have 2 directional antennas facing front and 2 omnis, and it's kind of like having diversity. But the LZR, I would only use that on my analog goggles if I was sure I was going to be flying in front of myself. Let's see here. We've got a $10 super chat from Travis Eastman. I'd like to install a DJI Air unit on a fixed-wing bind and fly that has no flight controller. Would disabling low power mode work for this, or is there another option that would work better? So if you're talking about the original DJI Air unit, the Cadix Vista, basically anything except the O3, then yes, disable low power mode and you have full functionality. For the O3, simply disabling temperature protection, or whatever it is they call it, does not enable full functionality until you have a flight controller that tells the VTX that it's armed. But for the DJI Air unit, yes, it's fine. We got a question here from, it's Blunty, but originally from Spider Pig. What do you think the first iGao 4 challenge will be? Ooh, I don't know. What do you think the first iGao 4 challenge will be? I mean, I could try to ask Daniel Sugano. I'm going to ask Daniel Sugano, who is the guy who runs iGao. I'm going to ask him if he has any like teaser that he wants to give us. I don't know if he's going to answer. It says he's active now. And we will come back to that question and see if he answers it. Let's see here. We've got a $5 super chat here from JP Spin, who says, failsafe problem with a new build on 4.3. Pulling the module or powering off the TX keeps the motors keep running. From disarmed, the motors start running. Whoo! Okay, so if the motors start running when you're disarmed, first of all, don't put props on that quad, for God's sake. Okay? Don't put props on that quad. Okay. I guess the first thing I would think about doing is we're going to go, hang on, I'm going to start up Betaflight. And if we go into the failsafe tab, if you, let's say you have an aux, your failsafe is on aux 1, okay? And so in the failsafe tab, you configure aux 1 set 2000, okay? At that point, when you failsafe, aux 1 is going to go to armed. Does that mean it's going to stay armed? Surely Betaflight's smarter than that, right? Surely Betaflight knows, like Betaflight will know that you're failsafed and will ignore that, right? Chat? Am I crazy here? Surely they'll ignore that. Let's assume that Betaflight is smart enough to not let you like set failsafe to force the quad to arm. Now that John Goblin points out that's stage 1 failsafe only. It'll only last for 1.5 seconds and then it'll go to stage 2. That's a really good point, John Goblin. Do you have GPS rescue enabled? Now you're pulling the module though. I'm assuming you're like arming it on the bench. And GPS rescue would not cause the motors to start spinning if you were disarmed. What could cause the motors to start spinning when you're disarmed? The thing is, in order for that to happen, the flight controller cannot know that you're in failsafe. As soon as the flight controller knows that you're in failsafe, it's going to just cut everything off. So for the motors to start spinning when you remove the module, I think your receiver is set up wrong. For example, you can set most receivers, instead of going into failsafe, they can do what's called fixed channel positions. And if somehow you set your receiver up that way, then your receiver, when you go into failsafe, would not tell the flight controller that it was in failsafe. Instead, it would output pre-programmed signals. So JP Spin, I would want to know what kind of receiver you got, because that's what we're going to need to know to troubleshoot this any further. That's a weird one. I don't think you're going to get in that situation easily by accident. That's a really far out one. Kent J wants to know, have you switched to using the Hero 11 most of the time? No, I'm currently... So I tried to switch to the Action 2, the DJI Action 2. It has fantastic durability. It is, in so many ways, the ideal freestyle action camera. The screen breaks instantly. Who cares? Don't use the screen. Just get the little battery pack that has the screen on it, and then when you land, just plug it in, and now your screen is not broken. The image quality, the exposure algorithm, and the dynamic range and the color on the Action 2, to me, was a deal breaker. I couldn't deal with it, and I sold my Action 2s. And I'm currently using the Hero 8. I have not switched to the Hero 11. The Hero 11 Mini sure has a lot going for it, but I've heard so many reports of people with problems with it locking up on them, it refusing to charge, and then I've seen some pictures. In fact, I think I saved one of these pictures. Yeah, this is a picture someone sent. It was on Facebook. Apparently, there's a particular way that the Hero 11 Mini cracks. And like several other people in the chat were like, yup, mine cracked the same way. So if you do run the Hero 11 Mini, don't expect it to be as sort of bulletproof as like a Session. Or get yourself a good padded 3D print. Of course, then you're offsetting some of the weight. But there you go. No, I'm running the Hero 8 right now because the Hero 8 is the cheapest GoPro that you can get at Best Buy with Best Buy insurance. That is literally how I select my cameras. That's it. I bought one Hero 11 when it was $200 on special because I just wanted to try it out, but it's not my daily. A lot of people are doing what Brandon Beans is doing and just going all in on the 03. The 03, the video is not perfect, but the ability to save, it's pretty good, and the ability to save a GoPro sure does help. Let's see here. That guy Carlos wants to know, which is better if I'm not going to specifically storage charge after flying, 3.7 or 3.9? I can't answer that question. I wanted to take this question because I think it's a question that a lot of people wonder and would be interested in, and I want to acknowledge the question, but I don't have any data to tell you like which is better, 3.7 or 3.9. I really don't know. Like they're both 0.1 volts away from storage. If I had to pick, I would pick 3.7. I have no data for that. That is just a gut check. But it feels to me like 3.9 is like, I don't know. I would pick 3.7, but I really don't know why. I don't know why. Nice. As always, Black Jungle is keeping things entertaining in the Discord server with the memes. If you want to see all of Black Jungle's memes, you can join the Discord server by signing up for my Patreon. Patreon.com, link in the video description. Actually, it's a bit.ly link in the description, technically. And, yeah. I mean, there are many good reasons to join the Discord server, but the memes from Black Jungle certainly are one of them. Kevin Murray wants to know why their GPS is reading 30 miles off. I got nothing. I would just have to do process of elimination. Try a different GPS. Is there somebody, can anyone tell me, smart people in the chat, is there some parameter in like uCenter that they could log into and check to see if it's misconfigured in some way? When you say it's the same, I think it's not. He says both have a mini GM8. It's not even the same GPS unit, literally the same physical unit. It's two separate units of the same model. I don't know the answer to that one, though. That's for sure. Is there any chance that you're not where you think you are? No, I'm sure he knows where he is. Like, presumably, Betaflight is reading the correct coordinates. Do you live near a military base and, like, they're jamming you or something? I don't know. Brandon Bean says, just use auto configure and no other options. The regional option is known to cause issues sometimes. Interesting. So if he has like tried to manually select GLONASS or something, then he could be getting issues. Just set auto and nothing else. Let's see here. Ice Goalie 31 wants to know, if price wasn't an option, do you think a Boxer or a TX16S would be better to purchase? So Ice Goalie, both the Boxer and the TX16S are great radios. They're not, there are other great radios out there, by the way, but you asked about those two, so that's what we'll talk about. I think that either of them could be a good choice. The TX16S, you've got the large color touchscreen, which makes it a little easier to configure the radio in the field. And it makes it nicer because you can have a whole bunch of like information on the top bar, telemetry information and so forth. Whereas on the Boxer, the screen is a lot smaller. You don't get as much ability to just glance down at it and see what you want to see. The TX16S has slightly more switches, although not very many more, but more switches and knobs. But the Boxer is got, enough for a lot of people. I personally prefer the ergonomics of the Boxer. I like a little bit smaller form factor, but I don't like the TX12 to me is too small. I don't like it. And the TX12, I think, doesn't have full-size gimbals. Whereas the Boxer is just a little smaller and has full-size gimbals. And I think the ergonomics are just about perfect for me. So I would say that I have settled on the Boxer, but that doesn't necessarily mean you will like the Boxer better. This isn't a situation where one of them has a definitive advantage over the other. It's a situation where the one that you like the best is going to sort of be a personal choice, and neither one is the wrong choice. I will say, for a lot of people, the fact that the Boxer is so much less expensive than the TX16S is going to mean that it's the one to get. Mr. Eddie Nunez wants to know, I updated my iFlight F722 Twin-G to 441, and now it's not being detected by any computer. Betaflight isn't seeing the quad, can't load it into DFU mode, nothing happens. Did I brick it? So Eddie...
Just real quick, I took this out of the... I would love you to go over why, how to do this stuff. Just so you know, we went back and forth with a bunch in the Discord, so I took it out of the queue on purpose because we could not figure out his issues with a bunch of back and forth. So I told him to email you because it was probably an email question.
Yeah, because this is a weird one. I want to cover it because it's a weird one. And it's a weird one because simply flashing a flight controller with Betaflight Configurator can't brick it. Like the DFU mode that you use to flash the flight controller, it's in the processor, and by flashing the processor through Betaflight Configurator, it's not possible to disturb that DFU code. It's somewhere separate, safe, and that's the whole point. A long time ago, the code that you use to flash the processor, not a Betaflight processor, but in general, a processor in general, the code that you use to flash the processor was in the same sort of storage partition as the actual running code itself. And so when you flashed the processor, if the flash got interrupted, you might have overwritten the code that was used to perform the flash, and then you would truly be bricked and not be able to reflash the device. But the manufacturers got smart, and they took the bootloader code that is used to flash the processor, and they put it somewhere safe and in a box that cannot be sort of overwritten or erased or tampered with. And so anytime you're flashing Betaflight and your flash goes wrong in some way, and now the flight controller, it's bricked, DFU/bootloader is still there inside the processor, and you should be able to get at it by holding... The ultimate workaround is to hold down the bootloader button and plug in USB. And if that doesn't work, then there are a couple things that it could be. And I'm going to go through what they are. One thing that it could be is that the drivers or the USB cable on your computer is messed up. No one ever thinks this is the problem. They're always like, no, that's fine. But it is the case. You can download the Impulse RC Driver Fixer app. Impulse RC Driver Fixer. You can Google it. And that will fix your driver if your driver has become messed up. That doesn't work 100% of the time because sometimes your driver is really messed up, but that should work most of the time. Another thing that can cause DFU to stop working is literally if your bootloader button is broken. Some flight, my JBF7 flight controller, you can't really see this. It has like one of the metal buttons. It's actually a physical button. Some of the flight controllers have like a little metal film button that can be damaged just by poking it or pressing it. It can tear off. And in that case, the button may not work, and it'll be more difficult to put the flight controller into bootloader mode. A third thing that can happen is that these flight controllers, they can be put into bootloader mode through a UART. So normally, when we go into bootloader or DFU mode, it's via the USB port. But the manufacturers of the processor know that not every device is going to have USB. And so they have the ability to force the processor into bootloader mode by doing something to a UART. And sometimes if you put a receiver or a GPS unit on a particular UART on a flight controller, it will kick the flight controller into bootloader mode. But instead of going into bootloader on the USB port, it'll go into bootloader on that UART, which will then confuse the hell out of you because you're plugging in and you're on the USB and it looks like it's in bootloader mode, but it's not. Betaflight isn't responding. The fix to that is to basically desolder your receiver, your GPS, unplug your video transmitter, just disconnect everything from the flight controller and then try and put it into bootloader mode and it may work. So this is sort of a general discussion about bootloader mode, right? But the shorter answer is that flashing the flight controller in Betaflight Configurator cannot brick the flight controller. It cannot destroy bootloader mode, DFU mode. It just really can't. So if you're unable to get your flight controller into bootloader mode, it's probably one of those things that I talked about. Or the last thing is hardware damage. Now, obviously, flashing the flight controller isn't going to cause hardware damage, so this story doesn't sort of point that direction. But if you've got a flight controller that simply will not go into DFU mode no matter what you do, you could just have a damaged flight controller and it may just be dead. So, Eddie Nunez points out that he has crossfire on UART 1. That's possible, Eddie. So, Eddie, I think it's UART 1 and UART 4, but I'm not 100% sure I'm remembering that right. On the JBF7, we changed the manual. We used to recommend that you put crossfire on UART 1, but people were unable to get into bootloader mode because the crossfire receiver was kicking the flight controller into bootloader on UART 1. And if you just move it to UART 2, you'll be okay. All right. Hopefully that fixes it. Bloated Goat wants to know, can you brick a flight controller by disabling USB in the ports tab? No. I mean, I know what you're getting at. So let's show this real quick so people understand, in case anybody's not clear. What he's asking about is if you go here, Betaflight devs have gotten smart. It used to be that you could disable this MSP connection on the USB port. The Betaflight devs won't let you do it anymore. Good. That's great. Actually, I'm not sure I noticed that, or if I did notice it, I forgot it. If you're on an older version of Betaflight and you disable this and save, then you will not be able to get back into the flight controller to configure it, but you could just put it in DFU mode and reflash it, and it's not bricked. So. That's amazing. Ooh, oh my goodness. We are starting to back up on the super chats. We're going to have a super chat free extravaganza in just a minute. But before we do, here we go. I got a question here from Magneto again. Have you tested out the Fractal Engineering 18650 long range quad? I've heard it can fly for 15 to 25 minutes of cruising, and it's foldable. So Magneto, I haven't tested that. It's entirely plausible that like a little, what is it, is a 3-inch? It's entirely plausible that a quad of that size could fly for 15 to 25 minutes on some 18650s. There are other like ultralight 18650 quads that have accomplished that. I haven't tried it, but that's entirely plausible. On a small frame like that, I'm not sure that being foldable is an advantage to me. I mean, the quad is already super small, so what's the point of folding it? And folding to me just adds another break point. But I don't want to. Fractal Engineering's a pretty smart guy and makes good stuff, so I don't want to sound like I'm. And I haven't even seen the damn thing, so I don't want to sound like I'm coming down too hard on him for that. Okay, let's clear the super chats. We've got several. Looks like 12 super chats. No, 10 maybe. We're going to try and catch up on them. We will get back to the Discord server and the YouTube chats as soon as we clear this, but we got to keep the super chats. People pay money for them. I got to read them. You know how it is. Delta Kana said, thank you for a $5 super chat. I sent you an email about a long range build. I'm working on. Could you go through it briefly? It's nothing crazy. Alrighty. Let's see. Where is that? It's always tricky. Oh, here we go. James Guillermino. Let's take a look. James asks, can we zoom in on this? Maybe we can make it zoom in. Oh, that's a little easier to read. I am wanting to build a long-range quad to go at least 24 kilometers. I'm not sure what I should use to build it regarding the VTX receiver and radio. For the VTX, I want to use the DJI Air unit with the Avatar camera. Is there antenna upgrades I should use on the Air unit? For the goggles, I have DJI V2 and want to use XAir patch antennas. Receiver-wise, I'm thinking about using Crossfire. Radio-wise, I have DJI. I was thinking about modifying it to fit the TBS module. Is that possible? Okay. So, James, first of all, I want to I want to give you the same warning that I give to everybody who reaches out to me asking about a long-range build. And I want to say that if you are not already a moderately experienced RC pilot, I don't recommend that you build a long-range build. And the questions that you're asking make me think that you're not, that this is like your first RC plane, okay, or RC quad. If I'm wrong about that, that's cool. Well, I'm still going to answer your questions. But I want to say there are so many things that can go wrong with long range. And when they go wrong, you lose your quad. You lose your aircraft. It just crashes in the mountains and you never see it again. And yes, there are things you can do to work around that, like having returned to home and so on. But it's just the chances of you just completely losing your aircraft and all the work and money you put into it is gone. They're high. They're at least medium. And so I don't recommend anybody start with long range, right? Now, I do like the fact that you're talking about flying in the mountains, because then if you decide to ignore my advice and go fly your plane in the mountains and you fail safe and you crash it, at least you just lose it in the mountains and you don't crash it on somebody's car or somebody's house or etc., right? But it would be better if you just didn't lose your quad entirely. So I would say that before anybody tackles long range, they should be a moderately experienced pilot just at normal FPV flying in the, say, sub 1 kilometer, maybe sub 2 kilometers, within line of sight. Line of sight, because obviously you have goggles on. Within the line of sight of your spotter, who is totally there. Okay? Because when you fail safe, or when you lose video and you're flying within the 1 to 2 kilometers range, then you just walk out and you get it. You pick it up, you come back, you're like, oh shit, I screwed up. What did I do wrong? You learn from your mistakes and you figure out the things that, oh, I didn't put my props on. I didn't tighten my props nuts. One of them came loose while I was flying. My quad fell out of the air. Okay, don't do that again. Oh, I see. When I fly behind a building or a hill, I lose video and the quad crashes. Okay, don't do that again. And then eventually you learn all these things and then you're ready. You go, oh, I see. When I fly my battery down to this voltage, then suddenly the battery takes out. And it seemed like I could keep flying, but it turns out that I couldn't and I lost my quad. Oh, but you didn't because you weren't flying long range. You learn all these things and then you go fly long range. And there's still a lot of things about long range that will screw you up that you'll have to learn. And you may still lose a quad, but at least you'll have learned the basics. So. Get into your questions. You can't use the DJI Air unit with a non-DJI camera. So if you're using the DJI V2 goggles, you will be using a DJI Air unit with a DJI camera. For the Air unit, if you're trying to fly long range, I would get a high quality antenna. The stock antennas aren't bad, but like something like a... this is just one example. They make these quote-unquote long-range antennas, and basically all they are is an extra long stalk so the antenna sticks up higher. Oops, that was too far. So these are good for a long-range build. Okay, for DJI, you would want a left-hand polarized one. Pretty sure. So if you wanted to upgrade the antennas, you could do something like that. Going back to your question, X-Air patch antennas are fine. They're not the highest gain, but they're you'll be able to get pretty good range out of them. Certainly, Crossfire is a great choice for a long-range link. The 900 megahertz frequency is going to be just a little bit better than 2.4 gigahertz at bending around the mountains. Just a little bit better. I don't know anybody who has modified the DJI radio to fit the TBS Crossfire module. I think it's probably possible, but I don't think it's a good idea. I think you should just buy a radio that's designed for use with Crossfire. Or, here's the other thing that we haven't mentioned. I bet the chat is saying this and I haven't seen it. The DJI V2 system maxes out at 13 kilometers. It simply cannot go past 13 kilometers. It will simply lose video right at 13 kilometers. It doesn't matter what antennas you use, yada, yada, yada. There is a technical limitation. So if you definitely need to go 24 kilometers, you're going to need the O3 air unit.
I'm so sorry to interrupt one more time. We've lost YouTube chat this time.
Oh. Oh, nice. Someone is screwing with our chat because I showed the session ID, and they typed a message. Thanks, we got it. Please don't screw with the session anymore. If that keeps happening, I will have to just stop the stream and then reset the session. So, yeah, there was a chat sitting there from someone because I showed that that window ID. That's interesting. All right. Well, hopefully that won't keep happening. Okay. So there is a 13-kilometer hard limit. Blunty, you should have the chat back, I think. Yeah, you should. Thank you. Let's see. 13-kilometer hard limit. So you can, with the O3 system, you can go further. So you may want to choose the O3. And if you go with the O3, you probably can just go with the DJI controller and skip Crossfire. But if you choose to go Crossfire would be a better choice. And if you choose to use Crossfire, then you should just don't get the DJI radio. Get a radio made for use with Crossfire. All right, James, thank you for the super chat. Next up, we got a question from Cheech FPV. Thank you for a $5 super chat. In your opinion, what's the best, most durable 3.5-inch frame? Yikes. I mean, what's the most durable 3.5-inch frame? I don't know. I guess we're going to skip the whole sub 250 thing. Right? Chat? What's the most durable 3.5-inch frame? I just saw... Skylight. Bubby FPV says the Skylight. Oh, Bubby. Skylight's probably more durable than some. Don't care about 250 grams. The Micro Apex. See, I don't know. I don't beat the shit out of 3-inch very often. All right, people. Seriously, stop it. I mean, I'm just going to stop the stream and have to regenerate the key. But I would like you guys to just behave yourself. All right? Don't do it. Just behave yourself and let's keep having a good time. What do you think, Ciati? Foxy or Aura? Yeah, the Micro Apex is it looks pretty chunky. Looks pretty durable. Let's see. What is somebody else? The Foxy or Aura? Foxy or Aura 3.5. Does that look super durable? It looks like a nice frame. I don't know if that looks super durable. It doesn't look super durable to me. I could be wrong. It doesn't look like, I look at the Apex and I'm like, oh, those are some chunky arms. It looks super durable. Let's look at the skylight. Bubby suggests the skylight. I do like that I like the skylight, not the ducted version though. I think the ducted version you should just get a dedicated Cinewhoop. I think the skylight is sort of trying to be a Cinewhoop without starting life as a Cinewhoop. And so it's sort of like not quite right. But I think the 3.5 version that's probably pretty durable. They give up that 3.5 inch or that 250 gram limit. Now, people are suggesting the AOS 3.5. The AOS 3.5, Chris Rosser's AOS frames have never strove for ultimate durability. But I suspect that at the 3.5 inch size, it's just small enough that it's probably pretty durable. Diatone Roma F3.5. Diatone makes good frames. Are we going to be able to see any images of it? No. Okay. No images. But Omegod 250 is definitely not sort of durable. That's definitely not its wheelhouse. So those are some thoughts. I think the Micro Apex 3-inch, it would probably be a safe bet. It looks pretty durable, pretty chunky arms. The skylight is probably the things that sort of make it simple and robust, probably make it pretty durable. It's basically just a scaled down bigger frame. And so people would be like, oh no, it's too heavy, but that's also going to mean it's more durable. And I feel like the AOS 3.5 is going to be more durable than the AOS 5, even though it shares a lot of the same design cues, because it's smaller. So like the place where the AOS 5 always breaks is right here at the end of the arm, but these are shorter arms with lighter motors at the end. So I bet it's going to be more durable. Quadmula Siren F3. Is a 3-inch freestyle frame. So like when I look at the Apex 3, the arms are thicker than this. At least they look thicker. This doesn't seem like a particularly durable 3-inch. It seems like a normal durable 3-inch. And also people have said that these mounting method here on the Quadmula Siren has a durability issue for some of them. The Massive Droner 3. That's probably pretty durable. Do they still sell that? This is definitely heavy for a 3-inch. That's probably pretty durable. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, those are some choices. Continuing our attempts to clear out the super chats. Billy, I got to go faster if I'm going to clear out the super chats. Billy asks, is the new TrueRC Bulus antenna worth it? What is the Bulus? That's not a thing. It's misspelled. Blunty, you have any idea what he's asking about?
I know he said the same thing like 3 times. TrueRC Bulus.
Is that a new antenna they haven't announced yet? Shop. 5.8 gigahertz. Can I just see a list of your damn antennas? What is the Bulus antenna? Does anybody know what he's talking about? Bullets? Bardpole, Blaze. No one knows which. A Bolus. What about the bolus? Is it a bolus? The blaze? The bolo? No one knows what you're talking about. Nope. Sorry, man. No one knows what you're talking about. It's a new patch antenna? What is it called? What is it called? Bulbous? No one knows. The quad crosshair? What's it called? I can't comment on it if I can't find it. No, it's not the Bulbasaur. Bolos? Does anyone know where there is a... No, okay. I have no idea. I have no idea, man. If anybody can find out what antenna he's asking about and post a link to it in, like, the Discord, by all means, let me know and I will get back to it. Continuing, though. Coelho FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. What are your thoughts on these new propellers that look like a round pretzel? Are they available for quads? You're talking about those super quiet antennas that were in Mark Rober's video about the drone delivery. To me, those propellers look interesting if what you care most about is reducing noise, but they look like they would be zero durability, right? Like for freestyle and fun flying, they'll be imbalanced instantly as soon as they touch an obstacle. So I think that for people trying to do long range flying and who care, like, we still don't know anything about their efficiency. We know that they're quiet. Okay. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to know about them before we decide what they're useful for. But I think for most hobbyists, the cost of manufacturing them so that they're properly balanced and then the lack of durability would mean they're not going to be a great choice. I've gotten so many emails about these propellers. Like, people just love the idea of a weird propeller, right? Like the toroidal props. And it's like, that's cool, but like they're not for most of us. Are they asking about the toroidal props? My answer is the same, that if they're asking about the toroidal props. Toroidal props, so here's the thing. Chris Rosser actually just did a video about the toroidal props. We actually have some. I guess my answer is not the same. Chris Rosser did some testing on the toroidal props. We actually do have some data about them.
This video is sponsored by...
And the takeaway is that they are less efficient. They are a little bit quieter in terms of the character of the sound, but in terms of pure decibels, they're not actually quieter. But that the sound might be less noticeable, even though it's just as loud. And because of their weight and moment of inertia, they are less responsive. So you can check out Chris Rosser's video if you want all the details. But I don't think the toroidal props really lived up to their promise. People, by that I mean the promise of all the people on the internet who freaked out about them. I've seen people saying total nonsense about these props on Facebook. People saying, oh, toroidal props, they're more efficient, more powerful, and quieter. And it's like, well, no, they're not. They're like sort of quieter, but not really. And they're not more efficient. And they're not more powerful. Oh, I flew them. It's just some jackass 3D prints some props and makes a YouTube video and flies them around and is like, I don't know, it feels better. It feels different. It feels amazing. And then Chris Rosser actually puts them on a test stand and tells you how it is. And that's why, you know, the YouTube algorithm will forever be flawed because of Chris Rosser's video. Somebody who made a video, toroidal props, the next best thing, is going to get 80,000 views. And Chris Rosser is actually doing the hard work and is going to get 20,000 views. Anyway, that's not the question someone asked. Okay, continuing on. Ben Mills, thank you for a 10 Australian dollar super chat. I recently watched your ExpressLRS definitive guide, connected my new Boxer and the iFlight Evoke F6, but I was unable to flash the transmitter on the Boxer. I tried pass-through and Wi-Fi, but no dice. So Ben, this is maybe a tricky one to troubleshoot because I got to ask you questions and you got to answer the questions, and the live stream is not a great place for back and forth because there's a delay and you can't easily share pictures. But like I would, so pass-through often doesn't work. Don't stress about that. Don't use pass-through unless you absolutely have to. I use the Wi-Fi for everything. My question would be, were you able to get on the Wi-Fi network and connect to the web browser? And that's the first thing I would want to know, and then we would troubleshoot from there. Ben, I appreciate the donation, and you definitely should email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. And when you email me, feel free to mention that you super chatted, because I will certainly like pay just a smidge more attention if you tell me you super chatted me and I asked you to email me. I will answer everybody's question over email. I don't reject anybody because they didn't super chat. But if you tell me you super chatted me, I'll respect that and we can go back and forth on it. Unable to flash. Yeah. If you can get to the web browser interface, you really ought to be able to flash it. So I'd be interested to know at what point that's failing. Bob Kraus, thank you for a $5 super chat.
It's in the queue a little farther down there.
Yeah, I got it. I'm searching for his name right there. I'm on that one. Oh, and a $10 super chat. Very nice. Thank you, Bob, for the donation. I have the DJI V2 goggles and I want to install an air unit with recording capabilities on a fixed wing plane. Should I go with the original air unit or the O3? Oh, that's a tough one, Bob. So the original air unit has a bug that to my understanding still isn't fixed, where you get an SD card slow error, and it's not the SD card that's the problem. It's a bug in the firmware. It hasn't been fixed, and at this point it probably never will be fixed. Many people consider the onboard recording of the original air unit to be essentially non-functional because of this bug. So don't use the original air unit. But the O3 has its own problem. So the O3, great recording, onboard recording, wonderful, fantastic, perfect. But the problem with the O3 is that unless you hook it to a flight controller that tells it that it's armed, it will not go to full power. So if your fixed-wing plane has a flight controller, you're good to go. But if your fixed-wing plane is just a receiver and some servos, then life gets more complicated. Blunty, isn't there a device we covered on the news that will fake out the O3 to think it's connected to a flight controller? I know we covered it, but I can't remember what it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot.
I think somebody in the chat can probably mention it. We've talked about it just recently in the Discord, but I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. If anybody in the Discord or in the chat can remember the name of the device that you saw that you connect to your O3 to fake it out to think you have a flight controller when you don't really have one. Toasty, you can disable low power mode, but the O3 air unit still won't go to full power until you give it a flight controller. That's the reason you need to fake it out. On the Vista generation of video transmitters, if you turn off temperature protection, it goes to full power and stays there. But the O3 doesn't do that. Yeah. The O3 needs a flight controller. The thing is that the O3, when it says temperature protection, it doesn't reduce its output power. It reduces its frame rate, and it has a worse sort of encoding so that the processor is not working as hard, but the output power is what it is. So when you turn off temperature protection, now the frame rate and the encoding is always the same, but it's still not at max power until you give it a flight controller. Yeah. Okay. No one's remembering the name. O3 fake. No, that's made up. That's made up. If anybody finds it, we covered it on the FPV News. I can't remember the name of it. It's an Arduino project. Anyway. continuing our attempt to clear out the super chats, to catch up with the super chats so we can go back to answering free questions from normal people like God intended. I'm a slave to the capitalist dollar. Got to keep doing it. Cold Front and Penguin wants to know, thank you for a $2 super chat. Will a BLV3 AIO fit onto a Cockroach 65 frame? Siadi! Siadi! Are you there? He's not here. He's not here. Oh no. I don't know the answer. Siadi will know the answer. Ooh. Oh, Eirik Toft. Okay. Okay, hang on. I'm going to ping Siadi with this question and see if he knows the answer. Meanwhile, I am happy to share with you, Eirik Toft has found the project we were trying to find. This is the project. I don't care if it's his birthday. I need an answer to my question. Okay, we'll see. Arduino DJI O3RC ARM. This is the project you need if you want to fly an O3 air unit on a fixed wing with no flight controller. Good luck. Thank you, Eirik Toft, for finding that for me. Will I sing happy birthday? I don't know about that. That does remind me of something. That reminds me of something. Do I still have this? No. Oh, I don't know where this would be. I don't know if I'll be able to find this. I'm not going to spend too long looking for it. Oh, I don't know. Never mind. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to whether... I know that Newbie Drone flight controllers often have, like, weird stuff. I don't see why it wouldn't fit on a Cockroach 65 frame, though. So the BLV3 AIO... that looks like standard 25mm mounting. And the Cockroach... that's a Newbie Drone frame. Why wouldn't it fit? That's a Newbie Drone frame and a Newbie Drone flight controller. Am I missing something? It seems like it would fit, but the fact that you're asking makes me think that there's some weird thing about it where it might not fit. Well, I don't know for sure, so I'm going to hold off on that. FPV Mason says it does fit. Why wouldn't it fit? It's a Newbie Drone frame and a Newbie Drone flight controller. Why wouldn't it fit? Seems like it would fit. Well, anyway. Continuing on. Joey W says, yes, it fits. All right, well, people are saying it fits. Seems like it would fit. We're going to go with it fits. The real question is what 661 FPV says, why would you want to use that horrible flight controller and frame? I didn't say that, but I think that there are people out there who would ask that question, who dislike that flight controller. JP Spin, thank you for a $5 super chat. I'm using Crossfire. My older quads on older firmware act as expected. Could this be a Crossfire issue? Until I get this sorted, it's grounded. JP Spin has made the assumption that I'm going to remember what the old problem was. Oh, I do. I was able to look it up in the search history. Failsafe problem with a new build. Yeah, so if you're using Crossfire, in the Crossfire receiver, you need to make sure that the failsafe mode is set to cut. If it is not set to cut, that could cause this problem. That's why I wanted to know what receiver you were using. So JP-Spid, go into the Crossfire Lua script, go into the Nano RX section of the menu, and I think it's in general, the general menu, and look for failsafe mode and make sure it is set to cut. Ben D. First name Ben, last name Dover, probably, right? Ben D. Thank you for $7 Canadian. On a Cinelifter with 2 ESCs, which ESC is used for telemetry, the 1 or the 2? Both. Both. The beautiful thing about ESC telemetry is that all of the ESC telemetry wires go back to the same UART on the flight controller. A lot of people don't know this because we use 4-in-1 ESCs where there's a single telemetry wire for the ESC. But back when we had individual ESCs, all 4 of the telemetry wires go to the same UART. And what the flight controller does is it pulls the ESCs in round-robin fashion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, if you have 2 4-in-1 ESCs for an octo, take both telemetry wires, solder them both to the same telemetry pad on the flight controller, and it will work. Isn't that nice? Billy. Thank you, Billy, for a $2.49 Australian. Once again, we are presented with the confusing term that is probably vulgar in some culture, and you're just leaving these super chats to trick me into saying this, probably going to get me canceled, going to get me kicked off YouTube for profanity, this word that is on screen that no one knows what it could be. The answer is, depends on whether the 4S quad is African or European. That's the answer. So, not enough information. Kay Adamson, thank you for a $10 super chat. I love your shows and tutorials. I wanted to get an updated solution to getting the DJI Remote 2 to connect to Betaflight. Tried the S-Bus baud fast option and saved, but no worky. So Kay Adamson, the answer to your question is that you have to set the receiver up correctly. And in order to answer that question, I have to look at your ports tab, look at your receiver tab, maybe look at a CLI dump. The first thing you're going to want to make sure is that the remote is bound. So you have solid green signal on the remote, solid green LED. And in the goggles, you see the RSSI from the remote. There's a little icon of a controller with a signal strength bars next to it. That confirms that the controller is bound and talking to the air unit. Then you got to set up your flight controller. And that involves enabling Serial RX on the ports tab. That involves setting S-Bus and, of course, the S-Bus baud fast option that you talked about. So we can go through that stuff, but we're probably not going to go through it on a live stream just because that'll be pretty tedious. So if you want to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, I will happily go through it with you. Yeah. B-Man FPV thinks I should do the new sauces from Hot Ones. I'm tempted. That was a fun stream. And with Blunty's help, I wouldn't have to monitor the chat anymore. Blunty could read me the questions from the chat while I died from the hot sauce. That was a hell of a thing. I thought I was a badass too. I've gotten so used to restaurant hot wings being disappointing. And restaurant hot wings usually are disappointing because most people don't want to eat that awful, like the hottest sauce that a restaurant serves is usually not that hot if you're like used to eating hot food. But I made the mistake of going to a wing joint, an actual wing joint, and I ordered their hottest sauce. And it was, I'm pretty sure it was just a Reaper mash. Like it looked, there's a certain look, like there's different ways to make hot sauces. You're usually going to have peppers, and you're going to like mash or grind up the peppers or whatever. And then you're going to mix them with like vinegar or some fruit base. You know, you're going to have all these ingredients. You're going to make the hot sauce. But the hottest hot sauces are usually just a mash of the pepper itself. They literally just mash up the pepper, and they're like, F you, here you go. They don't add vinegar or anything that would dilute it, right? And this sauce had the look of a mash to me. I don't know how to explain it better than that. And I ate one, and if you eat hot stuff, you know that the first one you eat, you're not going to feel it for like, you know, a minute or two, maybe. So I ate one, and I was like, oh, these are pretty hot. I ate another one, and then I started wanting to die. And I think I didn't eat anymore. I was like, nope, I'm good. Because I was actually out with my wife, and she was like, yeah, as soon as you ate that first wing, you stopped talking to me, and like you got your serious face on. And I was like, yeah, no, I was trying not to die. And I figured it wasn't a good thing to do, to take my wife out to dinner and then eat painfully hot wings that would just have me dying and retching for the rest of the night. But I definitely got a little bit of a comeuppance. I came out of that live stream thinking, yeah, I ate 12 wings of the Apollo. I could do anything. Nothing scares me anymore. And then I was like, oh no, I'm still human. Hey, Fabio Pansera, good to see you. Good to see you, man. There's a restaurant near me that has a hot wing challenge. Their name is like, their name is Wing Stuff or Wings and Things. Their name includes wings, so I guess presumably they're a wing joint, but they're mostly, I think, just like a honky tonk that serves wings. And their hottest wings is habanero based, which, like, for real, for a restaurant, that's super hot. But for a wing joint, that's like, you know, that's like a 6 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10 in terms of hotness. So they have this wall of fame. And every time I go there, I think they're great. They're just a good level of hotness. It's a very flavorful sauce, very nice sauce. It's hot enough that I just barely am not just like eating wings. I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'm feeling this. But it's not like stressful. And every time I go in there, I'm like, oh, can I get the wings with the hottest, with the wall sauce? They call it the wall sauce, because if you do the challenge, you get on their wall of fame. And they're like, oh, you're brave. And I'm like, come on, stop. And like, and my wife was like, hey, do you want to do the challenge and get on the wall of fame? And I was like, no. It's not a challenge. So I don't know what's wrong with me. William Froggy says, I can't do hot food anymore due to GI issues that must have been caused by years of eating overly spicy food. You're not wrong, William Froggy. We're all on a clock, man, and eventually the clock runs out. Matt Sinderson, thank you for a $5 super chat. Let me just check, Matt, if you left a question in a different message real quick. Matt Sinderson. Right under it yeah, I got it. Matt Sinderson asks, I have a 1S serial, thank you, Blunty. I have a 1S serial charging board from Happy Model that came with my Mob 7 1S. It has 1.5 amp max printed on it. How do you determine a 1C charge using this board? I'm curious what that 1.5 amp max even means. Let me see if I can find this charger. Is it this charger? Let's see if we can find this 1 amp max on it. Where does it say 1 amp max? I don't see it. Or 1.5 amp max. It's not that one, says Jory. Okay. Which one is it? It's a series board. Oh, okay. This one. It's this one. Okay. That's great. Thank you. So the 1.5 amp max is telling you not to set a charge rate greater than 1.5 amps. I don't know why that would be. Because a pH connector can take more than 1.5 amps. I mean, maybe it can't. That's interesting. The way to determine a 1C charge rate for this is a series board, not a parallel board. So with a parallel board, you add up the capacity of the batteries to get the 1C charge rate. With a series board, you do not. With a series board, if I have 4 300 milliamp hour batteries, 0.3 amps is 1C. That's the answer. Fabio, it's 4:30 a.m. Why are you here? He stays up late. He stays up late all the time. I didn't record a video for you to edit today either, Fabio. You're off. You got nothing to do tomorrow. I'm going to tell you. I had a busy day. I didn't do any work. I answered emails, but I didn't shoot a video. So, yeah. So when you have a series board, all of the batteries should be the same milliamp hours. That's the difference between series and parallel. But, maybe the jumper is 1.5 amps. That's a good point. Maybe that's it. With a series board, all of the batteries are the same milliamp hour, and your 1C charge rate is based on that milliamp hour, not the sum. Spike Spine. Are we caught up on Super Chats? Oh my God, the Super Chats are coming in faster than I can answer them. We've been doing Super Chats for like 40 minutes and we're not caught up yet. We're going to have to pause and take some chats from the rest of this stream. We're just going to have to, on principle. Thank you for a $2 Super Chat. Any tips for new racers? I'm going to try 5-inch racing. Yeah, so first tip, get your fail-safe sorted out. They should do a tech check at the race where they test your fail-safe, but smaller races may not do that. If you fail-safe and your quadcopter flies into the stands or flies to the moon, you're going to look like a jackass. So test your fail-safe by take your props off, arm the quad, turn your controller off, the motors must stop before you go to the race. That's number one. Number two, figure out how to change your video transmitter channel. With analog, you want to have smart audio working. You want to know how to navigate that menu, and you want to know how to, if the race director says, in the next heat, you're going to be on channel race 7. You want to be able to, get on to race 7 and not be like, I don't know, what channel am I on? Hold on. And I'm not, I don't want to make a bigger deal out of this than it really is. Everybody at races is super nice and super, nobody's going to stress you out. But if you're trying to be as courteous as you can be to the other racers, then take the time to learn how to do that before you show up so that everything can go smoothly the day of. And if everything doesn't go smoothly, that's okay. Nobody's going to be an asshole to you, probably, and F them if they are. But just you asked for tips, so I'm giving you tips. Be able to change audio, change video channel, with some efficiency. Know how to do it. Because they're going to say, hey, okay, next heat is going to be so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And they may change your channel. Normally what's going to happen is at the beginning of the race, they're going to put you on a channel in a certain heat, and they're just going to try to keep you on that channel for the rest of the race. But a lot of the time, as people get knocked out of the race, you'll have to change channels based on what heat you're in. And so they'll say, okay, you're going to be in the next heat, and we need you on channel race 1. And then everybody's going to sit down, and they're going to all change channels to be on the right channel. And everybody's going to be waiting until everybody's on the right channel before the heat can begin. So if you're the last guy who can't figure out how to get your quad onto race 1, it's going to be I would be embarrassed, a little worried, even if nobody else was. And then once you begin racing, don't worry about winning or being fast. Especially as a new racer, you're going to be super nervous. You're going to hear deet, 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 beep, and you're going to jump off the gun and you're going to crash. And then that's it. You're done racing, right? So get your laps in. Don't stress about winning. You're probably not going to win. Don't stress about what anybody else is doing. Just get out there, find your pace. Don't think about the other people. In fact, as a beginner who's probably pretty slow, maybe when the race starts, just wait 2 seconds after everybody else jumps off the blocks, and then you just go and race your race while they all do whatever they're going to do. And just focus on slowly, smoothly getting comfortable with the process of racing, and then you can worry about getting fast later. All right. I'm going to take one more super chat, and then oh my God, we have so many super chats. I'm going to take a couple questions from the regular chat before I go back to the super chats. Jad Collado, thank you for a $10 super chat. If your Vista is updated to accept the new goggles firmware, does it still have the 13-kilometer limit? So I think what you mean is that you're using the Vista with the goggles 2. So you've updated firmware. The O3 Air unit does not have the 13-kilometer limit. I can't remember. Does the O3 Air unit have any limit that anyone has found? I don't know if it has a limit that anyone's found. I don't think they found a limit. It may have a longer limit, but I don't think we know what it is. What's the furthest anyone's taken an O3? Does anybody know? It was a ways. So I think that if you update the Vista to work with the goggles 2, it will also not have that limit, because it basically turns the Vista into an O3, except obviously it doesn't have the same hardware, but logic-wise, RF-wise, the Vista acts like an O3 when you bind it to the goggles 2. 23 kilometers, Bobby Bag says, is the furthest anyone's had an O3. So, all right, let's take some questions. Let's turn off the super chat filter and take some questions from the regular chat before we get back and try to finish the super chats before the end of the stream. Mr. FPV Kid wants to know, would now be a good time to buy analog goggles? I've looked at getting HD0, but each one of their VTXs costs $100. It's not a possibility for me. Currently have a $500 budget. The HD0 goggles could be a good choice if you're trying to go analog. They're an excellent analog goggle. You may not want to spend whatever $600 on them, so whatever it is. But even if you didn't plan to fly HD0, some people would choose the HD0 goggles. They have an excellent deinterlacer, they have great screens, and they have an excellent DVR. A dedicated analog goggle like the Orca would be an excellent choice too. They don't have quite as good a setup as the HD0 in terms of the deinterlacer and so forth. So the image won't look quite as good, but it's still going to look pretty good. And the Orca goggles are going to be a lot more compact than the HD0, as well as a little bit less expensive. With a $500 budget, I think your best choice is going to be to get a used set of Orcas, although I don't think there's a ton of used Orcas out there. A used Skyzone Skyo 4X, or maybe a used Fat Shark HDO2. So that's what I would say. I think new goggles with a $500 budget, I think you're going to actually struggle to get under that. Let's see here. Toasted Pizza. I've seen this question a couple times, and I don't know the answer. I think my V2 goggles are stuck in FPV mode. There's no option to pick digital systems. Should I downgrade the firmware? Toasted Pizza, I've seen a couple situations where there was no option to select other systems. In one case, I said to the guy, "Are you sure you don't have V1 goggles?" Because the V1 goggles never got the option to bind to the DJI FPV drone. They never got any of that digital stuff. And he said, no, they're V2 goggles. And I said, well, are you sure? And he went back and looked and he was like, oh, no, yes, you're right. So if you have the V2 goggles and you cannot pick any of the digital systems, then number one, update the firmware, because if you never updated the firmware, then you may not have got a firmware that can do digital. But then number two, if you're on the latest firmware and you still just don't see that option in the setup menu, you might accidentally have the V1 goggles. So,
I think that might be on the nose piece as the easy reference. If you flip the goggles upside down and look at the bottom of the nose piece.
Yeah?
If I remember correctly.
I think also the antennas, although many people got rid of their stock antennas. The antennas have a divot on them. Blunty, let's see. Let's see if we can find like some pictures of the V2 goggles. Is there something about the nose piece? What are we doing here?
I believe it's like literally actually labeled under there, like a little label with the battery voltage. Yeah, and V2s are 6S, but V1s are 4S.
Oh, you're right. Oh, come here. You are right. Oh, right here. Yeah. It's like lasered in here. I can barely see it in the light. It says FPV goggles V2. Yeah. Okay. So right here on the underside of the nose piece, it says FPV goggles V2 or V1, and that's the first thing I would have you do. Because I can tell you for sure, I just last week, had an email with somebody who was like, it's so weird. And I was like, yeah, it is weird. And then I was like, are you sure you don't have the V1? And he was like, no, I don't have the V1. And it turned out he did. So shit happens. Let's see here.
One other thing, can I suggest real quick?
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
If for any DJI firmware issues on the goggles, if nobody can really tell you what's going on, I would typically suggest you go to FPV WTF Discord and ask in the general or troubleshooting channels there about the DJI issues, because typically they've seen a lot of these for people that are trying to root. Mm-hmm. And so they'll know like, oh, actually you need to do this, or actually you have this, or that sort of thing. They can probably point you in the right direction.
I thought you were going to suggest that they use FPV WTF butter to roll them back. That's another thing you could try. If you've got anything weird with your DJI firmware, you can, and if you want to download FPV WTF butter, if you don't know what that is, search FPV WTF butter. I've got a video about it. But it's basically a utility that rolls back your goggles to an old firmware and just completely factory refreshes them. And they can sometimes fix issues. Also, JBD FPV points out that the V1s don't say V1. They just say DJI FPV goggles. But the V2s do say V2. Okay, so thank you for pointing that out, JBD. Quixo says, hello, I had a 2S Tiny Hawk Freestyle before and a 3S Baby Ape 3-inch. Now I want to build my first 5-inch. What should I go with? 4S or 6S? I don't have any batteries yet. Go with 6S. Go with 6S. Get some 6S motors. If that's too powerful for you, use a motor output limit in Betaflight to scale it down to like 80 or 85% until you get comfortable. But don't waste your money on 4S batteries that you're instantly going to outgrow. Sorry, Bubby. Sorry, Bubby. Bubby flies 4S. Bubby and Drew both fly 4S, and but most people fly 6S these days, and I think that's probably what most people would be happiest doing. I think Bubby just flies 4S to be different. Can you trust anything that a guy says when he has a spoiler on his quadcopter? And I don't mean that Bubby is dishonest or untrustworthy. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is, if a guy comes to you and says, I've got a spoiler on my quadcopter because it makes me fly better, what he's telling you is, I'm pulling your leg. I'm taking the piss just a little bit right now. So then when he says, no, I fly 4S because it makes me fly better, on some level I'm like, you pulling my leg now? Are you serious? I got
to make a suggestion. Let's do a poll.
What's that?
There's a lot of the chat that says 4S. I think we should do a poll.
Oh, why? Why do they say 4S?
I mean, I would say 60, 70% of the chat says 4S right now. So I would love to see what the poll says. Maybe 8S? You throw 8S on there too?
No, that's just silly.
Okay, all right.
No one should do 8S.
That pulls all the trolls out. All right.
Why wouldn't you do 6S?
I don't. I'm 4S only, but
yeah, you don't fly big quads though. You only fly whoops. Do you fly? Well, no, do you even fly anymore? You just spend all day playing Russian Fishing Simulator.
That's also true. But my 4S, I fly. I don't know. I haven't ever bought 6S batteries still. So.
But you started with 4S, so now you're just sticking with it.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying 4S is bad. If you have a bunch of 4S batteries and 4S quads, fly them. If you're starting from scratch, Let's see. Now, if we're talking 3.5 inch, that's different. On 5 inch, we're talking about 5 inch. Bubby says he likes the sag of 4S. Why do you like sag, Bubby? That's like saying I like vinyl records because they sound warmer. It's like if by warmer you mean less actual sound information. You're right. Go ahead, Blunty.
Would you prefer, like, I don't know, like electric has instant torque typically, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Versus mechanical feels
right.
like more mechanical, but it takes time. Like, it kind of seems like similar to that, right?
Bubby says 4S makes him smoother because the motors are less responsive. Who needs all that power anyway? I like the lack of sag. I like to be able to fly it down to like 3.4 volts and not notice. Ghost Branch says, in my opinion, the only valid reason to have a beginner start on 6S would be to teach them early that shit's expensive. The only thing I would say for me that would make somebody pick 4S to begin with, not the flight characteristics or any of that, because I think that's all sort of debatable. Like you could take a 6S and you could do a motor output limit and make it feel like a 4S mostly. But I'm not sure that 6S isn't more likely to blow ESCs. Not sure about that. There's no doubt that Blunty is smooth. I mean, Bubby is smooth. No doubt about that. Okay, what's the chat say? I'm ending the poll. 53 to 46. It's a wash. There you go. 4S, because you're going to kill your batteries anyway, so cheaper is better. But are 4S batteries cheaper than 6S? I don't think they are. You compare the price of a 1300 4S to a 1000 6S. I feel like they're just about the same. You're getting $22 or something. Siati says, wow, 53% of people have lost their minds. I love Siati. Bubby, you don't have to defend it. I'm just picking on you. You fly what you want, man. Your flying speaks for itself, dude. Your flying speaks for itself. That's the other thing that annoys me about, I'll say one more thing. That's the other thing that annoys me about Bubby and his spoiler and his 4S and all the other. Bubby, it's like Bubby's quad is specifically designed to annoy me. It's a personal problem, Bubby. Please don't take it on yourself. It's like 800 plus grams, so it's heavy as shit. He flies 4S, and he puts a spoiler on the back just to thumb his nose at me, which is pointless. There's no point. The spoiler has no point. It doesn't make the quad fly better. Theoretically, it makes the quad fly worse. But anyway. And then he goes out and he flies, and he's just like amazing. And it's like, well, fuck me. 860 grams. It's like he's doing it just to piss me off. If he had that quad and he flew like shit, I'd be like, dude, you got to get a different quad. You fly like shit. But he goes out there with that quad and he flies amazing. And I'm like, oh, well, what do I know? Imagine how good he'd fly if he had a better quad. All right. Folks, I have like 10 more super chats and we have, oh my God, like 13 minutes left in the stream. So I got to get on this. We got to start clearing out the rest of the super chats, okay? Let's see. We got that one. Slickback, thank you for a $2 super chat. Why do people complain about the Goggles 2 latency? I mean, some people are more sensitive to latency than others. The latency is there. The Goggles 2 have more latency than the V2 goggles by a small amount, and both of them have more latency than analog. And they have less consistent latency. The latency jumps around, whereas with analog, it's basically the same always. And those things are noticeable to some people. They are more noticeable to some people than others. When somebody like Mr. Steele says he flies better on analog, if anybody, I think, could notice that latency and be affected by it, I think it's somebody like him. When somebody like Vanover, I have seen Alex Vanover. We did a test at Rotor Riot where he flew analog and then he flew DJI on the same race course. When he flew analog, pretty sure when he flew DJI as well, I'm not 100% sure. But I know for a fact when he flew analog, his lap times were within 1/10 of a second of each other. Astounding. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little. Maybe it was 2/10. But he was so consistent. Like when you're, and it wasn't with a lap timer. Somebody was just running a stopwatch. So there was a little bit of variable. But like his lap times would be just like, 20.10, 20.11, 20.10, 20.15. And I'm like, Jesus, this guy's a robot. So when Vanover says that he can feel a difference in latency and his lap times change, I believe it. If you're not a super, super good pilot, maybe it's a little bit more placebo effect. I don't know. But I do think that it's real, and it is a fact that the latency on the Goggles 2 is higher than the V2, is higher than analog. Dan Navarro, thank you for a $5 super chat. What are some factors that would keep my Crossfire LQ at 99 in the OSD at about a half mile away? Well, I'm assuming you're at 50 hertz, Dan. That's not that far for Crossfire at 50 hertz, dude. Your LQ is just 99. Like, theoretically, your LQ could be misconfigured or something, but at a half mile, that's like, what is that in meters? Half mile is 800. That's less than a kilometer, dude. That's nothing. Crossfire hasn't even got its freaking running shoes on at a half mile. So, I mean, if you're at 500 milliwatts or 1 watt, and especially if you're at 50 hertz, but even at 150 hertz, maybe, LQ 99, completely normal. Yeah. Welcome to Crossfire. That's why you bought it. Yeah, Valenty.
And just a suggestion, as you've done before in your video, you can toss it in the fridge and see if your LQ
good
drop.
Point. That's a great point. Thank you, Valenty. Yeah, if you want to test it, shove it in the fridge. The fridge is a great big metal box. Plug your quadcopter. I'm serious. Plug your quadcopter on, put the quad in the fridge, close the door, and walk outside your house. If LQ is still 99, then maybe something isn't right. Thank you, Ike Queen FPV, for a $10 super chat. Is the Axis of DJI Avata frame upgrade kit a worthwhile upgrade? Thank you for a $10 super chat. You're talking about the Axis flying Avata kit. This is a very interesting. I haven't flown this, so I can't comment for sure. But the idea that you're going to take the Avata and you're going to put 3.5-inch props on it to try to get it to fly better, that's very interesting. The question would be, number one, can the Avata motors handle it? In this example, they've upgraded the motors to T-motor motor, or Axis Flying motors, sorry. Axis Flying was founded by some T-motor employees who broke off, so in my head, they were still the same for a second. But even if you use the stock motors, then the other question would be, is the PID tune like correct for this new setup? I don't know. For $60, it's mighty tempting to try it. But I don't know, because I haven't tested it. Steve Trick says it has bigger motors, but that's not included in this kit, is it, Steve? You have to buy those separately. Travis Eastman, thank you for a $5 super chat. Are the Caddx Nebula Pro Nano Vista and the Caddx Polar Air Unit compatible with Goggles 2? Yes. You have to update the firmware to 01.01.0000 or newer, and then they will work with the Goggles 2. Those are two cameras. The Nebula Pro Nano and the Caddx Polar are cameras. The Vista is the actual video transmitter. And is compatible. Do either support 16.9? The Nebula Pro Nano definitely is switchable between 4.3 and 16.9. The Caddx Polar, I'd have to remind myself. The Caddx Polar is not switchable. I'm pretty sure it's 16.9 only. I'm pretty sure the Polar is 16.9 only. Yeah. Oh, well, that looks like 4.3, doesn't it? Is the Polar 4.3? Shoot. Come on. Just tell me. Come on. 16:9. No, it says right here. Aspect ratio 69. Thank God. So the Polar is 69. Only the Nano Pro is switchable 4.3 and 16:9. Daryl May, thank you for a $5 super chat. What's your favorite Whoop radio and goggles for a noob? As far as a favorite Whoop goes, probably the Mobula 6. As far as a radio goes, you know what? Hang on. Actually, we are running up to the end of the stream, and I still have a bunch of super chats to go. So I will refer you to my website, fpvknowitall.com. fpvknowitall.com. Home of the ultimate FPV shopping list. You want to know about a good Whoop for a beginner? Go to the Tiny Whoop page and search for Bind and Fly. Boom! Want to know about a controller? Go to the controllers page. Boom! Yeah. There's various choices here. I would think hard about the controller because the controller, a lot of people want to buy a really cheap one, but maybe if you think you're going to be in the hobby for a long time, you should save up a little bit and buy something a little more expensive and live with it. So, yeah, that's where I would send you. As far as goggles, go to Analog FPV Systems, Analog Goggles, boom! Is this still in stock anywhere? It is. I'll be damned. Look at that. Oh, not there. Not there. Not there. Okay, just Pyrodrone. Is that right? There you go. Just Pyrodrone. Go figure. Thank you, Remy Tim, for a $10 super chat. It's National Leave Ciadia super chat today, aka his birthday. All right, so everybody, when I finish the stream at 10, let's all head on over to Ciadi's stream, and I'm going to send him a big super chat. If you want to know how big a super chat, head on over to his stream, and you can leave him a birthday party super chat too. Rasim Traveler, thank you for 7,500. Ooh, I don't know what those are. Let's find out. I always like to know the currency. Those are South Korean won. Thank you for 7,500 of them. I don't have a question, but I wanted to thank you for what you do for the FPV community. Thank you so much. For that, Quad City Bay Area, thank you for a $5 super chat. I only get red light on USB power, no receiver power. Betaflight works on USB power, and the Quad works with LiPo plugged in. Quad City Bay Area, some flight controllers don't power up the receiver from USB. So based on what you've described to me, I think you just have one of those flight controllers and nothing is wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 super chats left. 3 minutes to go. Let's see if I can do it. Ike Queen FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. Is Orca still a good option for analog? Yes. Are they still rolling out firmware updates even though their promise of digital has not yet evolved? I don't know about that. I would have to look at the Orca page to see when the last firmware update was released. But honestly, how many firmware updates for an analog goggle? Like, what are they going to... I think that there's not a lot to do. It's a pretty solid goggle. And, it doesn't have a lot of bugs or anything to fix. So I'm not sure about that. But it's still a good option. It's a solid analog goggle. Everybody super chat so Bardwell can't end the stream. $2. Shout out for Bubby, $2.79 Canadian. Thank you for DataQ for $5 Australian dollars. Just saying thanks. Captain Bry, thank you for a $5 super chat. Why isn't anyone talking about the right way to say Captain Bry? What? How else would you say Captain Bry? Isn't that? How else would you say it?
Captain Bry?
Captain Bry? It's clearly spelled Captain, like Captain Crunch. Scoodle says, please help me arm my drone. Scoodle, email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. And Ashley Thomas, thank you for 44 rupees. No question from Ashley. Is there another question hidden down here? Ashley Thomas. I don't want to miss Ashley's question. Captain Bryce says I've said it correctly. Nope, just a 44 rupee donation from Ashley Thomas. No question. I guess that's that. Woo! I made it! Ooh, that was a lot of super chats, Plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of super chats.
I feel a little bit bad when I don't get to spend as much time answering questions from, like, I don't want people to think I only answer super chats. But I have to answer the super chats. So, except for this one from Eirik Toft. F him. All right, folks. We're going to wrap up. We're going to wrap up the stream. Thank you so much for your generosity. Head on over to Siadi's stream and send him some love for his birthday. Eventually, that glorious, glorious head of hair will not be with us anymore. It's coming, Siadi. Good night, everybody.